Salut YouTube! In today's video, I am going to do my best to share everything I know and explain why in the land of cheese and butter and cream and croissants, French people are able to stay so slim. And the statistics don't lie, France does have the lowest obesity rate of 35 OECD countries. Only 10% of them are obese. They don't diet. You don't often see them running around a gym 5 times a week. So how do they do it? It's just not fair, right? And I've heard some people say, oh, it's their genetics. Guys, think about it. This doesn't make sense. France is almost in the center of Europe. Imagine the millions of people that have passed through this land over the last thousands and thousands of years. Their genetics have no greater superpowers than the Italians do, or the Brits do, or the Spanish do. And plus, this argument is null and void because the obesity rate and the average weight of the average French person has been steadily increasing over time with the introduction of globalized diets and influences from other parts of the Western world, meaning that it was actually what they were eating and, very importantly, how they were eating that makes the big difference. So let me share with you 6 lessons when it comes to food from the French that allow them to stay in shape with very little additional effort. Lesson number 1 is that the French take their time to eat. So we've all heard about the famous 1-2 hour lunch breaks in France, and this is not a myth. So even in Paris, even in the corporate working world, we break for 1 hour at lunchtime and we sit down at a table and eat our lunch. And it takes this long because the French will break their meal down into components. So a traditional meal would be your entree, your main, the cheese course, and then dessert. For us in the corporate world at lunchtime, we usually just have an entree and a main, or a main and a dessert, but the principle is still there of breaking your meal down into courses. So this helps to maintain a healthy weight for 2 main reasons. So the first is you're at the table, you're eating with all 5 senses. You know, you're not distracted, still working on your computer screen or watching TV in the evening. You're there present with your food. If you can imagine, you start on your first course. You know you have the time, you're not rushed, you chew more slowly, and you actually savor what you're eating rather than just quickly inhaling a sandwich, for example, at the desk. Secondly, when you're doing all of these things, your brain has the time to register that you've actually eaten. So scientists say that it actually takes the brain 20 minutes to figure out that you've eaten. And so when you eat quickly, your stomach is full, but your mind is still hungry. And this is why we just keep eating beyond what we actually need. In France, because you've got the time to go course by course, you can actually take a moment between courses when you're shifting your plate. So you've finished your entree and you're starting on your main. And it's a very different relationship with your main because you've had the time to figure out how hungry you still are, how much room you have left, and then you make a decision to continue. So even though you feel like you're having 2, 3, even 4 courses sometimes, things are so spread out and the portion sizes are smaller anyway by default that you actually end up eating less than you would if you had one big plate of food and you're quickly trying to shovel everything down as fast as humanly possible. Lesson number 2 is that the French eat a lot of everything, but don't eat too much of anything. What do I mean by that? Well, France is not a country of deprivation when it comes to your diet. Their sauces are creamy, their duck is cooked in butter, everything is the real deal. You'll find it really hard to find low-fat, sugar-free, fat-free products like we kind of have in New Zealand, America, and the UK, for example. But why? Isn't that really unhealthy? Well, not really, because usually these products are more highly processed and they're more difficult for our bodies to digest because they're less natural. What the French do is they take the real full products, but they will just eat a little bit of everything. There's a lot of variety in the diet. So at lunchtime, for example, it'd be completely normal that I have a full chicken breast, some rice, and some vegetables. And then for a dessert, you might have some yogurt or a fruit or even a cake. But my point here really is that you have a full meal, a lot of fruit and veg actually, and a lot of flavors on your plate. You know, the French women around me don't cut entire food groups out of their diet, like carbs, for example, like we do. French women eat their carbs. And I think because they eat everything in moderation, they don't get these insane cravings and they don't binge on things. French people eat a lot of everything. They eat in-season products. They don't eat processed foods in general. And they avoid genetically modified things like the plague. And you often hear French women saying things like, je fais juste attention, which means I'm just paying a little bit of attention. So they're never on these big crash diets. They're not doing the Atkins diet. They're not doing like whatever the big trend diet is at the moment. What that means is that they still continue to eat a little bit of everything, but maybe in smaller portion sizes, and they'll always just take a piece of fruit or a yogurt instead of taking something super sweet, for example. Lesson number 3 from the French is that food education is as important as maths. It's as important as spelling. It is a subject in and of itself. French people are educated about healthy food and eating habits from the moment they can eat. They're not like us at 23 years old Googling away like which foods have high sugar content. That's a little bit too little too late, don't you think? And they say that the diet you have in your early years impacts your relationship with food for your whole life. So let's move on to the French crèche or the kindergarten, because this is just kind of insane. Every day, these little French children, 2, 3, 4 years old, will sit down for lunch for 1 hour at the table, and they will eat their 4-course meal, which has been provided by a chef with organic ingredients. A huge variety of food. The menus are changing week after week. They have strong flavors. They have blue cheese. They have shrimps. They really get the kids to eat a lot of diverse products. And this is at no additional cost. This is highly, highly subsidized by the state. The crèches and kindergartens in France are very, very cheap, and it's all inclusive. This is educating their future citizens about something that they're going to need to do every single day, which is to eat in a healthy and balanced way. You actually see these small children and they learn to do things like serve each other first before they start eating, to drink water, to eat in a slow and healthy and civilized way. They're using their metal knives and forks. For example, no plastic cutlery up in here. Lunch is really seen as a class that lasts a full hour. I actually have an example menu in front of me, and some of the main courses are like lamb skewers over couscous, cod fish in a dill sauce, and for the desserts it's the choice between a caramel or vanilla flan. Like, these kids are 2 to 4 years old. My French boyfriend, for example, never had fizzy drink growing up, and his whole life he's eaten at McDonald's maximum a handful of times. I think it sounds kind of mean to a culture like us, like, oh, these poor kids never getting these treats, but that's just normality for them, so they don't view it as mean or restrictive. That's just normal. Lesson number 4 is around eating at consistent hours and privileging eating at home. So I've mentioned this already in one of my culture shock videos, but I was really shocked when I came here at how strict the schedule is when it comes to eating. You eat 3 meals a day, and if you have a snack, it's called a goûter, and it's something that you have maybe around 4 to 5 p.m, but that's it. So thanks to this routine, you really know your body like clockwork, and so you find that the French never let themselves get too hungry, which means, of course, they never let themselves get too stuffed, because they don't wait till they're absolutely starving to eat. And because as well they eat the proper meals, they sit down for a real filling lunch and a proper dinner. You're not snacking away in the afternoon, and you're not snacking in the evenings either. You don't get those cravings for ice cream or biscuits or anything at 9, 10 p.m. And in France, they can stay largely in control of when they eat in the evenings, for example, because they really privilege eating at home, I've found. A lot of French people do. They think that dining at home, hosting at home, having friends around, I think, in the home is just as sexy as eating out. A recent study by the Committee for Health Education here in France found that eating is still very closely linked to the national heritage here of consuming good food for pleasure. In France, 76% of meals are prepared at home, and the favorite place to eat both lunch and dinner is in the family home, with 75% saying that they eat at the family table. Lesson number 5 from the French is that they just know when to stop. I think the secret here is really around the courses, and that you break the meal down so you have that moment to stop and think, am I still hungry? How much more do I want? And I've also noticed that when you've got a bowl of salad on the table, for example, you always just take a little portion each, but there's always some left in the bowl. So you'll eat and then you'll finish your share, and then you'll have a moment to think, do I want more? And then if so, yes, and then you take more. So you don't serve everything that's on the table on the plate straight away. You don't fill up your plate completely. You just take a little bit of everything, finish that, and then we'll go for round 2 if you feel like it. But there's also something here, not just around auto-regulation, but around peer regulation as well, because I have friends and my boyfriend sometimes will comment on how much I've taken, and they're not trying to be mean or shame me, but they'll be like, oh, that's a lot. And that actually seems to be culturally acceptable. But you do sometimes hear those comments from colleagues like, oh, I couldn't eat that much, or oh, you must be hungry, or oh, that's very sugary, be careful, don't eat too much of that. And although I'm trying not to take it as a shaming thing, I'm kind of like, this isn't any of your business what I'm eating. But yeah, it's just, anyway, it's something that I've noticed over here. So lesson number 6 isn't so much about the food, but it's about drinking. So the stereotype about France is that they're drinking wine at lunchtime, at dinner time, when actually, yeah, they may enjoy a glass of wine at dinner time, for example, but they don't care for hard liquor, and they're never out to drink too much, so they're never out to get drunk and absolutely trolleyed. Okay, young people aside. And I do have some French girlfriends that are living in the UK, and they're horrified with the amount of drinking that gets done in the UK, especially at university. A lot of them say like, okay, I might drink a lot, but never to the extent where I would get drunk and fall over and vomit. I think they think it's probably quite vulgar to end up in such a drunken mess. And my point is that alcohol has a lot of carbs in it, and drinking is very closely linked to weight gain. And yeah, they just don't have the same kind of approach to alcohol either here in France. So those are kind of the main principles that I wanted to cover with you guys today, the 6 lessons that I've learned from the French. I'm almost expecting quite a few people to comment on the fact that French people tend to be skinnier in Paris than in the regions. And I think that is quite true to an extent. There's usually a wealthier portion of the country living in the big city, so you'll get those young, wealthy Parisians who have interests in yoga and fitness blogs and health in general. You're also super active around Paris. You're walking everywhere. You'll walk 5 to 10 kilometers a day just going through the metro system. And yeah, Paris is kind of a stressful life, and you've got to remember that stress can sometimes burn calories for certain people as well. One topic I haven't touched on here is the smoking, because I know the French smoke a lot, and I know that smoking is an appetite suppressant, but I honestly think that's such a tiny, tiny piece of the puzzle. And if you think about it, is every single smoker that you know slim? Not sure. And I really think it's around the attitude around food, the mindset, and the approach to eating in France, which is kind of the secret. And let me know what kind of topics below that you'd like to learn about or know more about. I'm happy to do research, to investigate, and to give my opinion on the French, life in France, and all of that crazy stuff. And until next time, guys, à bientôt!